You think this is your personality, the way you speak, the way you smile, the way you say, "It's fine," when it's not. But what if it's not you? What if it's just a role you learned to play? So they would stay comfortable. You weren't born polite. You were trained to be pleasing. You weren't born emotionally quiet. You were rewarded for being easy to manage and over time. You became what they responded to, what they approved of, what they didn't push away. That version of you wasn't chosen. It was constructed, piece by piece, smile by smile, silence by silence. You became who they needed you to be, not who you are. This video is about that construction, the false self, the mask that got love, because the real you was too much for their system to hold. Now it's time to take it off. Quietly, without apology. Let's begin. False self-dismantling initiated. Part 1. What is a false self and why it exists? A false self is not fake. It's functional, built not to deceive, but to survive. You weren't lying. You were adapting, because the truth is, you didn't feel safe. To be who you really are, the false self, is the version of you. That was accepted. That got praise. That didn't make waves. That didn't ask too much. That didn't take up too much space. It was never based on your essence. It was based on what was needed. To keep peace, to keep love, to keep access. Be good, be easy, be impressive, but not too much. Be reliable, but never difficult. So you built it. Brick by brick, reaction by reaction, you became the peacemaker, the overachiever, the self-sacrificer, the emotionally controlled, not because it was natural, but because it was safe. And they called you so mature, so strong, so thoughtful. But deep down, you started to feel something else. Number empty, disconnected from yourself. That's what the false self does. It keeps you accepted, but not connected. It keeps you functional, but not alive. It makes you easier to love, but harder to feel real. And one day you wake up and realize, I'm tired, but I don't know who I'd be if I stopped playing this role. That's how you know. It's not your personality. It's a performance, one you never auditioned for, but became so good at. They forgot it wasn't the real you, and maybe you did too. Part 2. How they built it into you. They didn't tell you to be someone else. They didn't have to. They just responded differently every time you showed them. Different versions of you when you were expressive. They called it too much. When you were sad. They made it inconvenient. When you had needs. They looked away, went quiet, or made you feel like a burden. You learned fast. You noticed which versions of you made them smile, which versions got praise, which ones made them proud. So you amplified those and slowly muted the rest. You became the version that kept you safe. The good one, the quiet one, the helper, the achiever, the one who never asked to be held without earning it. They told you they loved you, and maybe they did, but they only fully embraced the version of you. That was easier to love. The more contained, the more emotionally tidy, the less complicated, and the more you complied, the more they rewarded you. So well behaved, so easy, so mature for your age. But what they really meant was, You're not a threat to how I need to feel about myself. So you adapted, not out of dishonesty, but out of emotional survival. You started giving what they wanted. Before they asked, you stopped expressing. Before they rejected, you smiled. Before they turned cold, and little by little, the real you went underground. They didn't force the mask onto you. They just made sure the real you was too expensive to keep around. So you left it behind, to belong. But now it's time to go back, not to be accepted, but to be whole. Part 3. Signs you're living as a false self. You think it's just how you are, but it's not. It's how you've learned to be. To avoid rejection, to avoid conflict, to avoid being too much. Here's how you know. The false self is still running the show. You constantly filter your truth. You think before you speak, not out of thoughtfulness, but out of fear. Will this make them uncomfortable? Will they still like me? Am I being too intense? You water down every sentence before it ever leaves your mouth. That's not communication. That's survival scripting. You feel disconnected from your own emotions. You say you're fine when your body says otherwise. You smile when you're breaking. You perform stability because you're the one who's always okay. But deep down, you don't feel known, even by yourself, because the more you act strong, the less space you give your real self to exist. You only feel loved when you're useful. You're the listener, the helper, the one who never asks for much. You don't feel safe being seen unless you're providing something, and when you stop giving, you feel disposable, because your value has been tied to your function, not your presence. You avoid attention unless you're performing. Being truly seen feels unsafe unless you're controlling the narrative, unless you're performing a role. That's been proven to earn approval. Real visibility feels risky, feels exposed, feels undeserved. So you stay behind a version of you that always knows how to keep things light, smooth, acceptable. You don't know who you are. When no one's watching, when you're alone, you feel empty, not free, because your identity has been built around reflection, around what others needed, what others praised, what others could handle. You were never asked, "Who are you?" without the performance. And now you don't know how to answer it. These aren't personality traits. They're protection mechanisms, built to keep love, even if it means losing yourself. But there's a cost, because the longer you play the role, the more the real you fades into something you can't even access anymore. Part 4. Why it's dangerous to stay in the false self. The false self doesn't ruin your life, it lets you survive. And that's what makes it dangerous, because it works until it doesn't. People like you, but they don't know you. They trust you, but only because you've never challenged them. They admire your strength, because you never showed them your struggle. And that admiration becomes a cage. Don't speak up. Don't break character. Don't ruin what's working. But what's working is quietly killing you. The false self makes you valuable to everyone but yourself. It gives you connection, but no intimacy. It gives you approval, but no truth. It gives you attention, but never permission. To be all of who you are, you become safe, predictable, digestible, and in return, you disappear. you get love based on a version of you. That doesn't feel real. So even when they say, "I love you," you don't believe it. Because deep down, you know, they love the character, not the one behind it. And the longer you play that role, the more hollow the praise becomes. The more loved you are, the lonelier it feels. Eventually, the false self doesn't protect you, it buries you. You lose access to your real instincts, your real boundaries, your real voice. Not because it was taken, but because you forgot how to use it. And that's why it's dangerous. Not because it's false, but because it becomes so convincing. Even you forget. It's not who you are, until one day you wake up surrounded by people who love everything about you, except the parts you had to kill to be accepted. Part 5. How to dismantle the false self. You don't break the false self by talking about it. You break it by doing what it was trained to avoid, because the mask was built from reflex, from reward, from silence, and it dies the moment you stop reacting the way they expect. Step 1. Say what you actually think. Not what sounds polite, not what maintains peace, not what's emotionally palatable. Say the real thing, clean, clear, unapologetic. Let the room flinch, let them process, because every time you filter less dash dash, the real you steps forward. Step 2. Let people be uncomfortable. The false self's greatest addiction is harmony. So when someone disagrees, you over-explain, over-apologize, over-smooth. Now, you do none of it. You let silence hang. You let misunderstandings stand. You learn to say, "I said what I meant," and leave it there. Let discomfort do its job. It's not your job to soothe it anymore. Step 3. Stop performing for love. Don't overgive to feel worthy. Don't stay agreeable to feel safe. Don't earn your spot with usefulness. Show up as you are, not as they like. Let someone meet your truth without the packaging. And if they pull back, that's not rejection. That's reality check. Let them leave. Step 4. Disobey the polished reflex. You want to smile? Don't. You want to nod to avoid tension? Don't. You want to be understanding when someone violates your boundary? Don't. Every time you override your instinct to appear composed, you reinforce the mask. Now you do the opposite. Breathe. Stay still. Let the energy get heavy. That's where authenticity reclaims territory. Step 5. Anchor your truth with repetition. This isn't one big act. It's 1,000 small rebellions. Every unfiltered answer, every held boundary, every moment you let them see, you're no longer playing the role. At first, it feels like chaos, like rebellion, like loss. But underneath that noise is something else waking up. You, the one who never needed to earn love, by being smaller, sweeter, softer, the one who was always there, just waiting for you to come back. Part 6. Your true self was buried under who they needed you to be. You were never broken, just edited, shaped, softened, simplified, not by force, but by expectation, approval, conditional love. They didn't say, "Don't be yourself." They said, "Be easier, be quieter, be what we can handle." And because you needed love, you became manageable, versioned, polished, predictable, but it came at a cost. You gained acceptance, but lost access to the real you. You forgot how to speak without filtering, how to feel without guilt, how to exist without reading the room first. You became an echo of who you were, trained to keep the peace by erasing the fire in you. And the world rewarded it, but rewards aren't freedom. The version they accepted wasn't your highest self. It was your safest one, the version that wouldn't confront, wouldn't rise, wouldn't risk being misunderstood. But that version isn't you. It's the shell they built so they could stay comfortable. Now it's your turn to let that version die, to stop apologizing for being whole, loud, clear, contradictory, real. Because the true self doesn't need permission to return. It just needs you to stop hiding it. Final CTA. For the next 72 hours, speak without shrinking. Feel without filtering. Choose without asking. Stop managing their comfort. Start revealing your depth, because the real you was never gone, just buried beneath who they needed you to be. False self dismantled.